Welcome to the fourth session on the series, Swadhyaya series of Psychic Being. We are studying the text, Emergence of the Psychic Being by A.S.Dalal, which is a compilation of the words of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother in a small book, very beautifully organized, very easily understood and well structured on this topic of psychic being. Many followers of Mother and Sri Aurobindo regard the understanding of psychic being as an advanced subject. But this small booklet is an excellent introduction. It arranges the text in a way that it is easy to understand and brings together passages of relevant understanding in the same place and also sequenced well. As a part of this Swadhyaya series, what we are hoping to do is to come together as seekers, read the book. Also, as a part of the talks, I try to bring together the relevant themes. Sometimes I may reorder them. Sometimes I bring in relevant quotes of Mother and Sri Aurobindo from other places, and probably share some examples from outside of the text also. But the whole effort is very simple. It is to help us understand, as a spiritual seeker, how do I recognize my Antaratma? How do I get in touch with my Antaratma? Psychic being is what is colloquially called as Antaratma. After all, that is the essence of any significant spiritual endeavor. Any of us who have inclination towards spirituality, we want to realize our true Atma. And the Mother and Sri Aurobindo have very clearly given us guidance of how to reach out, how to connect, and how to bring the Antaratma forward in our life so that we have a certain dynamic equation where our soul guides our earthly journey. Sri Aurobindo and Mother, in their literature, I have found probably for the first time a very clear guidance on how to work with the Antaratma. I have said this before. In many texts of Sanatana Dharma, we have references to Atma. But rarely do we get a methodical description of how to work with it and how to bring it forward and how to gradually restructure our own being in such a way that the light of the Atma shines forth in our life. Some introductory sentences as a recap of some of the earlier sessions. Psychic being is a projection of the divine consciousness into matter to awaken matter out of its inertia so that it takes the path back to the divine. So the entire philosophy of Sri Aurobindo says that the divine has come down and embedded himself in the matter, and now that divine spark is seeking fulfillment. So there is involution coming down and evolution going up. And psychic being is this projection of the divine consciousness into matter. The Mother has said the psychic being is in the heart center, in the middle of the chest, but it is deep behind. We discussed this a little bit. Where the anahata is, there are three aspects of our being that are associated with this region of the center of the chest. At the superficial level are the emotions. When we try to go within, there are emotions and layers of emotions that we need to cleanse and clear. The ego center is also somewhere in this region, and deep inside is the psychic being. So this is the journey that we need to make in our heart center. The psychic being is initially a spark. With sadhana, it is to grow into a flame. In most people, the psychic is entirely veiled. Veiled means covered. And it is overshadowed by its mental, emotional, and physical instruments. In Sri Aurobindo's Integral Yoga, one of the frameworks he gives us to work on ourselves is to understand our being, what we call I, in 3 layers. The body is not very confusing. We all know what the body is. Then Sri Aurobindo uses the word vital to capture pranamaya kosha, or the emotions and energies, the emotional being. This is the vital. And then the mental, which is the realm of thoughts. So the psychic being is initially veiled and overshadowed by the mental, vital, and physical instruments, because we have thought patterns that are more or less crystallized. We all think in our own mold of thinking with endless thoughts throughout the day and probably at night as dreams. We have our emotional rigidity, a certain pattern of emotions that keep playing out again and again. And of course, we have the physical part, which also has its own temperament and tendencies of inertia, tamas, and all of these things. And for the psychic being, for the Atma to shine forth, the difficulty is that these patterns and repetitive behavior patterns interfere with the light of the psychic being. We'll see more about that today also. We saw the example of a lantern, how we had these old lanterns with a glass and a flame inside, but gradually the glass gets covered with black soot and you'll see less and less illumination. Then we also saw another example the mother gave where she talks about the divine as the generator, the individual as the lamp, and the psychic being as the wire in the individual that connects us to the divine. So these are some of the themes we discussed a little bit. Today we are taking up chapter 2 and a bit of chapter 3 as well. Chapter 2 is action and influence of the psychic being, and chapter 3 is contact with the psychic being. So initially we will take up the influence of psychic. In general, Sri Aurobindo points out that nature works from the grosser elements to the subtler elements. Initially, there is the manifestation of matter, the physical matter, with a lot of inertia, darkness, and so on and so forth, when probably life hadn't emerged even in its primitive form on Earth. And then gradually, there is the emergence of life energy. One sees it in the plant. This is already one level of refinement. And then there is the manomaya, the thought process and the thought capable, which is even more subtle. And that is why most of us are not aware of the subtler elements of our existence, such as the soul or the psychic being. Right now, most of us are mental beings, and we are imprisoned in this frame of mind, probably a cube of 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches, somewhere here. Our whole existence is defined by it, and endless thoughts keep interfering there, and it doesn't give us an opportunity to feel anything subtler than the thought. So nature moves from gross to subtle, and the movement towards psychic being or the soul is in line with that progression. The psychic being acts on the surface life by influences and intimations it throws up upon the surface. In the very first talk, we spent a lot of time discussing the outer being and the inner being. Our constant flood of emotions and our endless stream of thoughts is what we call surface being. And most of us live most of our life in the surface being itself, except when we go through acute pain or acute difficulty of some nature or the other. Therefore, here what Sri Aurobindo and Mother are saying is that the psychic being, which is the subtle aspect, the soul, it tries to give guidance to the mind and the emotions, but those emotions, by the time they reach the surface, it is difficult. The psychic does not stamp its authority, unlike emotions, for example. When we have a strong emotional outburst, the emotion asserts itself on our mind, on our body. Our thoughts are mangled, our speech is mangled, we get angry, we have shivering. All of this is the vital, the pranamaya, stamping its authority on the rest of the being. But that is not the case with the psychic being. So what happens when certain intimations come? A certain sensitive feeling for all that is true and good and beautiful and fine, pure and noble. These are the kind of characteristics that the psychic being imparts to our outer nature, our thoughts, our feelings, our conduct, our character. It is when there is the influence of psychic being or our soul that we are drawn to spirituality. We are drawn to something deeper. Otherwise, we are not. We are very content in our physical, emotional, and mental matrix. Last month, I was in Bombay, and I invited an old friend over for dinner to catch up. He and I had worked together many years ago. And, that was in our 30s, and now we are in our 50s. And interestingly, quite a well-to-do person, he said, I am trying to find meaning of why I am doing what I am doing. He says, पैसे कमा लिया, बच्चों को अच्छा पढ़ाई दे दिया, have a good house and have a good car. But is this all? Is there something more to life, or is this life? A poignant question. Such questions are indication that the inner being is knocking on the door from inside. And the physical, vital, and mental are trying to understand, what am I doing? Why am I here? One of my school principals, he used to say, you haven't come here to eat mountains of rice with buckets of sambar and die, or have children and die. There is a deeper calling, and that prompting comes from the psychic being. But what happens when the psychic being capacities come is that the lower nature tries to use the psychic capacities for its own profit. It stains it, it diminishes it. The guidance of the psychic being is gradually misappropriated, misused by the instrument of the mind and emotions and body. We know this, right? Not only the guidance of psychic being, any spiritual capacities we develop, our lower nature tries to use it for our profit. It could be somebody as straightforward as saying that I make a living by telling you a little bit about your future. I don't have an opinion on whether it's right or wrong. I'm just pointing out. Or somebody who is able to do a basic element of thought reading, which does happen as a siddhi when one works on spirituality. Or other elements which give us the capacity to sit in a way. These are all attributes where the spiritual capacities are being misused by the physical, vital, and mental. I remember there is a story from Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's teachings where somebody walks on water and he says, I will cross the river and come to you. Then Ramakrishna asked him, how many years did it take to perfect this siddhi? He says, well, I've done tapasya of so many years. He says, well, is it only worth the Anna paisa that I give the boatman to put me from that shore to here, what is the use of your spiritual siddhi? Those days we used to have money in annas. Ek anna dene se the boatman will put me on the other side. Why do I need to spend 10 years mastering this siddhi? The psychic entity itself is free from the stain, but the guidance is contaminated. Sri Aurobindo draws a distinction. It reminds me of the statement of Gita that the fire doesn't wet the soul, the Agni doesn't burn the soul. The soul itself is not contaminated, but the guidance it gives is contaminated. All the desires and passions of the vital, which as soon as a force from the depths rises to surface, catch hold for its own satisfaction. Constantly, surface movements creep into the inspiration from the depths and deform it, veil it, defile it, ruin it completely, deforming it to such an extent that it is almost no longer recognizable. This is the nature of our working, whether the guidance is from inside or from above. In Synthesis of Yoga and Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo talks about how the light from above comes and it tries to uplift the lower nature, and how the darkness of lower nature contaminates it, warps it, distorts it. The same thing happens when the guidance from psychic being comes as well. And this is where we have to be very, very cautious. The guidance could be as simple as, I am going to get up every day a half an hour early and try to meditate. It could be something as simple and tangible as that. But what happens to us? Maybe we do it for 4 days or 5 days, and after that, we go back down. We make a commitment to ourselves. Oh, Srinivas ji keeps on telling, half an hour read Sri Aurobindo, half an hour read the Mother every day. Let me do it. I start for 1 week. What happens? We all know swadhyaya is very good for any spiritual seeker. But slowly the circumstances of life get hold of it. This is how the vital and mental, with all their reasoning, scheduling, they try to tell us, we'll do it tomorrow, we'll do it in the evening. All this is nothing but the distortion of the prompting of the soul. There is a question someone asked the mother. Why do these external impulses, when they come into the contact with the inspiration rising from within, why do they spoil everything instead of getting transformed? The person is asking, when I receive a higher guidance, when I receive a deeper guidance, why doesn't the light transform the physical, vital, and mental? Instead, why does it get distorted? The mother says, this is a long passage, I've just shortened it to what I can explain here. It depends on the proportion. The inspiration from within acts, of course. It is not that it is completely absorbed and destroyed. It isn't that. Necessarily it acts, but it gets mixed. It loses its purity and original power. So the mother says the distortion over a period of time reduces. But how does it reduce? If we listen to it more and more. We should listen to the inner call more and more. Then the outer nature begins to be in tune with the inner nature. Elsewhere, the mother says, use your willpower, and if you feel your willpower is not strong enough, call me. Call my will, the mother says. So this is the nature of our journey. This is the nature of evolution. The higher and the lower continue to work together and struggle at times, but gradually things will get better. Sri Aurobindo elsewhere describes in a good amount of detail the psychic influence on the mind, emotion, and the body. He writes in a letter to a sadhak, what you describe is the psychic fire, Agni Pavaka, which burns in the deeper heart And from there is lighted the mind, the vital, and the physical body. In the mind, Agni creates a light of intuitive perception and discrimination, which sees at once what is the true vision or idea and the wrong vision and idea, the true feeling and the wrong feeling, the true movement and the wrong movement. This is how the psychic guidance comes. One of the things I share with seekers is, as far as possible, try not to do something that is wrong, wrong meaning something that is not in tune with our spiritual aspiration. When you know it is wrong, knowingly don't participate in it. Yes, at times there are mistakes, that's all fine. So the Agni in the mind creates the discrimination, the intuitive perception. That is the psychic influence on the mind. And we all know in the path of Vedanta how much importance discrimination is given. Vichara, Viveka, Vairagya. Viveka is what? Viveka is discrimination. And that comes from the psychic light. In the vital, the Agni is kindled as the fire of right emotion, of the kind of intuitive feeling, a sort of tact which makes for the right impulse, the right action, the right sense of things and reactions to things. So we have to again apply a sense of discrimination at the emotional level. Realize whether our emotions are flowing on the right tracks or on the wrong tracks. Because the mind and emotions are not all negative. In fact, if the vital, the Pranamaya Purusha, if it decides to collaborate, it can do a lot of good in spiritual seeking. We will see that again later today. So the right emotion, wrong emotion, jealousy, anger, fear, wrong emotions, generosity, gratitude, happiness, joy, right emotions. In the body also, Agni initiates a similar but still more automatic correct response to things of physical life, sensation, bodily experience, and so on. Usually, it is the psychic light in the mind that is first lit of the three. Remember discrimination again. The right perception, the right discrimination, that is where it all begins. So that is the influence of the psychic on the mind, emotion, and body. Psychic guiding our life. Question was asked to the mother. Mother, is the orientation of an individual's life directed by the psychic? In other words, is your life journey defined by the psychic? She says, yes, absolutely. Unconsciously for the individual most of the time. So on one side it is guided, but most of us are not conscious of it. We are not aware of it. But it is the psychic which organizes his existence. There is the psychic consciousness at work in life, organizing all the circumstances of your life, but not with a deliberate choice of the details. The broad contours are laid out by the psychic, by the divine, the inner divine. If you have within you a psychic being sufficiently awake to watch over you, to prepare your path, it can draw towards you things which help you, draw people, books, circumstances, all sorts of little coincidences which come to you as though brought by some benevolent will and give you an indication, a help, a support to take decisions and turn you in the right direction. This is the inner lamp that is lit, and it is guiding and showing us our path. Happy accidents happen. When we are struggling, we seem to find the right person who can give us the answer. I remember a young man who joined a PG, a paying guest accommodation, and he found one of Sri Aurobindo's poems, a very famous poem called Who, on the wall by somebody else who was in that room before. And that brought him into contact with Sri Aurobindo. And then his spiritual journey unfolded. These, all of us who are here, I'm sure, we have gone through such happy coincidences. It is a journey that gradually is shaped by the psychic, but because we are caught in the mental, vital, and physical web, it is not very clear to us. As we listen to the inner promptings more, the stronger the inner voice becomes. This is how psychic guides our journey. There is a section in chapter 2 where the mother talks about how the psychic being comes down during a birth. It's a very important and interesting and enlightening discussion. So I will just take a few minutes on that. Before we go there, there is also something else I want to share, which is, first, let us go through the journey of leaving the body, and then we will come about taking the birth. So even though this leaving the body part is not covered in these chapters yet, I will anyway touch upon it briefly so that the entire cycle is complete in a way. When we leave this body, the vital parts, the emotions and the desires or the attachments and the concerns and the fears, some of them manifest, and our vital being endures these difficulties and problems in the vital world. We have seen it described very vividly in Puranas. We know that. There is hell and this kind of thing, heaven, that kind of thing, all that. But these formations, the stronger they are, acute desire, acute concern, acute fear, acute insecurity, the more strong they are, the more time we spend struggling in the vital worlds. Then there are mental formations that we carry. They need to be dissolved or equalized. And then we move to the psychic world. And what happens, Mother says there, is in the psychic world, the psychic being takes rest. It absorbs all the experiences it has accumulated over a long period of time. It processes them. It grows based on those experiences. So the psychic being rests in the psychic world. And at a suitable time, it decides to come down again. One of the important things we need to keep in mind in all of this is somewhere we have to realize the script of our life is written by us, not by somebody else. It is written by a part of us that we are not in acute contact with, but it is written by us. So once the psychic being gets adequate rest in the psychic world, it decides that at a certain moment it will take a body. It chooses the place which offers it easy possibilities of development. The country, the conditions of living, the approximate nature of the parents, and also the condition of the body itself, its physical structure, and the qualities it needs for its experiences. So please, let us read this very carefully and understand this carefully. The psychic being chooses the place which offers it easy possibilities of development. The country, the conditions of living, the approximate nature of the parents, and also the condition of the body itself, the physical structure, the qualities it needs for its experiences, and so on. I don't want to trivialize it, but I also want to point out that the capacities of the body play a big role in what our life allows us to achieve, and it does not allow us to achieve. And I'm not talking only of one aspect. There are multiple aspects. As a singer, one can have a certain realm of possibilities. as somebody who has strong resilience. One may have a certain set of possibilities. It also goes to the aspect of beauty. One can say, perhaps if the person is particularly handsome or a lady is particularly beautiful, more doors open for that person than otherwise. So, we were discussing how the psychic being decides to take the body, and then it chooses a place which offers it easy possibilities of development. The country, the conditions of living, the approximate nature of the parents, the condition of the body itself, its physical structure, and the qualities it needs for its experiences. And interestingly, if just at this moment, the mother says, there is a couple upon earth, or rather a woman who has a psychic aspiration herself, and for some reason or the other, without knowing why or how, if she would like an exceptional child, answering certain exceptional conditions, if at this moment there is such an aspiration upon earth, it creates a vibration, a psychic light, which the psychic being sees, and without hesitation, it rushes towards it. Then, from that moment, it watches over the formation of the child. Consequently, its influence over the child, even before it appears in the physical world, its influence is there over the child even before it appears in the physical world. So, what Mother is pointing out here is that when there is an aspiration and there is a desire of the psychic being to come down, when there is an aspiration in a mother and there is a corresponding psychic being that wishes to take birth, then the formation happens, then the connection happens. Sometimes, this is not necessarily from this chapter, but from the general reading that I have done of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, if the consciousness is of a very high order, then it does not immediately enter the womb or the child. It watches over the child till the physical nervous system develops the capacity to hold the consciousness. Here, Mother says, a part of the psychic consciousness rushes into the being, and from its very first cry, gives it a push towards the experiences that it wants the child to acquire. Possible for the psychic influence to direct all the events, all the circumstances of the life of this child, till the moment it becomes capable of coming into a conscious contact with its psychic being. So this is the journey of life. You know, this is probably something that we all wonder about. How does it happen? When does it happen? When does the soul enter the body? How does the connection happen? Why am I born with a body which has these characteristics? Why am I born with a certain set of emotions like this, which are so difficult to control? Why am I born with a certain mental incapacity or mental framework? All of these things are answered, that basically our life is our own creation. Further, we will take up a few themes of chapter 3 today, probably not too many, but just a little bit. And then we will pause and maybe take a question or two. And then we also wanted to do a little bit of meditation, so we'll try to do that. Okay. Chapter 3 is contact with the psychic being. If you haven't read these chapters yet, please make an effort to read them. Try to come prepared if possible ahead of the class. If not, listen to this class and then go and read it, because these are very important themes that add value to all spiritual seekers. One of the things that we see mothers say at many places is that sustained effort is needed for coming into contact with the psychic being. She says, in the ordinary life, there's not one person in a million who has a conscious contact with his psychic being, even momentarily. Not one person in a million. It just goes to show how unconscious we are about our own soul or our own inner being. Forget even the soul, the inner vital, inner physical, inner mental. We are so much used to being on the surface being that we never really come inside. It is only with the sadhana and a very persistent effort that one succeeds in having conscious contact with his psychic being. In almost all cases, a very sustained effort is needed to become aware of one's psychic being. Usually, it is considered that if one can do it in 30 years, one is very lucky. The mother is saying that if we make efforts in that, specifically, not general spiritual efforts, specifically to come into contact with our psychic being, if one can do it in 30 years, one is lucky. 30 years of sustained effort. Now, it's possible that some of the seekers were a little unhappy with the time frame that mother gave. It is possible that somebody cajoled her, etc. But then she went on elsewhere to say something else. She said, naturally, it is very difficult to establish a contact between the most external physical consciousness and the psychic consciousness. Oh, the physical consciousness has plenty of goodwill. It is regular. It tries a great deal, but it is slow and heavy, and it takes long. But for some reason or the other, the vital takes a hand in it. Vital is our energy being. We want to achieve something, we are happy to put all our effort into it. If something like that happens, a passion seizes it. It wants this contact. If it really wants it, if it wants it with all its energy and all its strength and all its passion and all its fervor, then in 3 months, it is done. So the mother is kind of giving us very long time frame and also a fairly reasonably short time frame, even by any spiritual measure. We need to keep in mind the tremendous possibility here. It is a possibility that changes the direction, the trajectory of our being. We have lived for hundreds of lives, thousands of lives, tens of thousands of lives. What makes the change from being a psychic being coming forward and leading our life versus being an ignorant person that is struggling in the karmic cycle is this? If we can come into contact with the psychic being, it changes the trajectory of our life, of our evolution. If we make sustained effort with a lot of enthusiasm, with a lot of focus, with a willpower, and our vital energies backing it up, then it can be done in this life. It can definitely be done in this life. And we have seen what is to be done. The psychic influence on our mind, how our thoughts should be, how our emotions should be, how our physical should be. These are things, if we pay attention and we remind ourselves. Somewhere I think I've read that in the 1940s in Sri Aurobindo ashram, there was a very, very conscious awareness among all the sadhaks during that decade to bring forward the psychic being. And the psychic being is the only thing that is worth all the spiritual endeavor, to be in contact with the psychic. Then Mother goes on to say that there are two aspects of our personality, if we can develop, they can help in coming in contact with the psychic being in a big way, in a very big way. I will read the Mother's words here. There are two principal things. The capacity for enthusiasm, which makes one come out of inertia in order to throw himself into the being which arouses him. It could be anything. It could be art for the artist, and somebody throws themselves into that direction. Science for the scientist. Every person who creates or builds has an opening, the opening of a special faculty, a special possibility, creating an enthusiasm in him. When this is active, something in the being awakens, and there is a participation of almost the whole being in the thing done. So this kind of an enthusiasm, an infectious enthusiasm, something that possesses our entire being to go beyond the obvious. That is one thing. And the second thing, she says something else. She says, I knew people who had no knowledge, so to say, of anything, who were hardly educated, whose minds were altogether of the ordinary kind, but who had in them this capacity for gratitude, warmth, something that gives itself, and is very thankful. For them, the contact with the psychic was very frequent, almost constant, to the extent that they were capable of it. They were conscious in the sense that they felt that they were carried and helped and uplifted. So Mother says, the capacity for enthusiasm, something that throws you out of the little ego, and the generous gratitude, which also flings itself into thanksgiving out of the little ego. These are two most powerful levers to enter into contact with the divine in one's psychic being. These things, they serve as a link with the psychic being, the surest link. So it's very interesting. The enthusiasm that we have. And in a way, we are all here on a Sunday evening at 8 o'clock. When probably the most preferred way to spend Sunday evenings with 8 o'clock is to catch up with family, get ready for the next week, or go to a cinema theater. And where I come from, you know which language in India produces the maximum number of movies? Most of you would think it is the Hindi film industry. Actually, it is not. It is the Telugu film industry that produces the maximum number of, at least this was true some years ago. I don't know if it is true this year or whatever, but at least 10, 15 years ago, Telugu film industry produced the maximum number of films in India. So we would be in a movie theater enjoying our popcorn and Coke or whatever. Instead of doing that, if we are here, then obviously there is some enthusiasm in all of us for something spiritual. So in a way, that already gives us an assurance that perhaps we can get in touch with our psychic being because we have this enthusiasm for spiritual life. So that is a good thing for the 20 of us that are here this evening. So already we have one of them, the enthusiasm. The second is the gratitude, the generous gratitude that Mother says. We should have this capacity to exceed our little ego and burst out of it. The generous gratitude is something that brings us closer to the divine. So we have to keep this in mind. In fact, Mother narrates a beautiful story. The moral of that whole story is, so many wonderful attributes are there in human beings that one attribute that is really, really rare and missing is that of gratitude. We have to make sure that we cultivate it. Giving a generous gratitude helps a long way in moving out of our little ego. Then someone asked a question to the mother. Sweet mother, you wrote to me that it is not easy to come into contact with the psychic being. Why do you consider it difficult? How do I begin? She says, I said it's not easy because the contact is not spontaneous. In other words, it doesn't happen by magic. It is voluntary. One has to want it and make an effort for it. The psychic being has an influence on the thoughts, the actions, but one is rarely conscious of it. To become conscious of the psychic being, one must want to do so. First of all, we must want that psychic contact. Then the mother gives another important hint. She says one must make one's mind as silent as possible and enter deep into the heart of one's being, beyond sensations and thoughts. One must form the habit of silent concentration and descent into the depths of one's being. So, this is the meditation that we will try today. This is the meditation that we will try today. We will try to enter into the heart region. We will try to enter and get into contact with the psychic being. And also, Mother gives us one assurance. I have already said many times that when one enters consciously into contact with one's soul and the union is established, it is over. It can no longer be undone. It is something permanent and constant. So, what we have seen here is that once the contact with psychic being happens, and it can only happen if we make conscious effort in that direction, then it can no longer be undone. We just have to step back in consciousness. We arrive at that consciousness. So I will probably, let me just take a look. Okay. I will probably take a few more minutes and cover one more subject or one more set of comments I have gathered together, because it adds value to this topic of contact with the psychic being. It's better to take it like this. So now we have seen few things. One, that the contact with the psychic being is something we must want. In fact, for many spiritual things, Mother says, first you must want it. And not want it in our in our surface consciousness. Oh, I want to have self-realization. Oh, I want to have peace of mind. Oh, I want to have happiness. That is our surface being talking. That wanting should be backed up with physical, vital, and mental sadhana in that direction. When we do that, and we do that vigorously for a long period of time, the contact with psychic being can happen. And luckily, once it happens, it cannot be undone. And also we will remember that it permanently changes the trajectory of our soul. There's something out of syllabus, something I didn't want to say, but I will say it anyway. I was sitting with one of the ashramites last month, and he brought into a conversation an important caution. He said, you know, If we don't make this psychic contact, if we don't make this in this life, God knows how many lives later we will even lead a spiritual life. And he gave me a specific example of somebody who was quite closely connected with the ashram in one of the previous lives. And in this life, she has no spiritual pursuit of any consequence. She says, so this ashramite was reminding me, he was saying, that we are in touch with the mother in this life, that we have come to a spiritual seeking, that we are able to read the works of mother in Sri Aurobindo, that all of us have contact with some serious spiritual seekers in this life. If we don't make an effort to establish psychic contact in this life, God knows how many lives it will take. Will the mother not care for us? She will care. She will be watching us, but she will be waiting for us to call her. Her guidance is immediate and effective if we call her. So my friends, let us make a resolve that this life we will try to make that psychic contact. Then I have collated a few experiences, not necessarily from this book, actually most of them are outside of this book, about what happens when this contact comes of psychic being. Amal Kiran, he goes on to say, it gives me an intense feeling of joy that was self-existent. Amal Kiran was a devotee of Mother and Sri Aurobindo who was there in the ashram during their physical presence, both Mother and Sri Aurobindo. He says, the psychic contact gave an intense feeling of joy that was self-existent. Two words I want you to note: joy, self-existent, not dependent on an outside object or outside relationship or outside success. Another ashramite says, opening of a psychic being was accompanied by a joy of an intensity he had never felt in his entire life. Intense joy. And this ashramite, he went on to add humorously, I could not expect that it would happen to a rascal like me. So the emergence of the psychic being accompanied by a lot of joy. A European lady says, a bursting of love and joy without any cause. Someone else says, awareness that there is something immortal in oneself, something in me that is immortal, something that precedes this birth, something that remains after death. It gave a sense of immortality. And Mother says this in some of the chapters, we're going to see this. When another person became aware of his psychic being, he discovered at the same time that this psychic being was in fact himself. It is his real I. Remember in the previous classes I had mentioned, please be careful, don't think of a psychic being as an object and you as the subject. Subject-object relationship in English is basically, there is me and there is something other than me. That is the object which I am seeing. I am the subject, that is the object. In the case of psychic being, it is a state of our own consciousness. It is not somebody else. My psychic being will not look like my wife or my child. That psychic being is me. It is a state of my consciousness. So this person, he says, he discovered that the psychic being was in fact himself. It is our own consciousness. An Aurovillian describes an ocean of light, strong white light at the level of the heart, the white light flowing everywhere. So my friends, these are some of the experiences of the psychic being that I wanted to share with you. I thought I should include that in today's discussion so that we understand that while the journey of psychic being is described as being difficult, it is something that we need to work upon. The mother has gone to say 30 years. The minute mother says 30 years, we say, oh, is janam mein to nahi hoga, not in this lifetime. No, we should not approach it like that, because the mother also said that if we really want it, if we put our vital intensity, then we can even make it happen in 3 months. So I think with that, we will take a pause of our sessions today, and then we will see some comments. If there are any questions, you can write and I can try to answer, and then we can move into the meditation. There was one question that I had seen earlier, which talked about the physical part. Kameshwari, could you read that question? Perhaps it disappeared from my chat after I disconnected and reconnected.
Yes. So the question is, can you please enlighten on psychic influence on tamas while sleeping? How to be out of tamas during sleep?
Okay. So in general, the physical has a tendency of tamas, inertia, laziness, lethargy, repetitiveness, solidity, but in a way that can also interfere with sadhana. Please don't think that physical is only negative. Physical also offers a lot of other things, which are stability, robustness. Actual experience of spirituality happens in the physical in integral yoga. We are not considered to have achieved our goal unless the light manifests in the physical being. The peace manifests in the physical being. Now, as far as tamas, why and how and all of that, we need to keep in mind that there is a certain natural tendency of the body to be stable, and it also goes down when sometimes in consciousness to the point of being inconscient. The cells in our being as we live are not very conscious. As far as we are concerned, they are in the inconscient. We know they are there. But it is possible to awaken consciousness in every cell. And Mother worked with the body to such an extent that she was almost awakening an aspiration for light in every cell. This is how Mother worked. Specifically coming to your question, the obvious things that you already know as to how to not have tamas in sleep. One, at least have a gap of several hours between food and sleep. Second, try not to have very heavy food at night. I come from a place, Hyderabad, which is famous for its biryani, and many places they have midnight biryani also. That is something definitely not conducive to spiritual living. Lighter food, cup of warm milk is something that is suggested between food and sleep. Generally, reading something light and not watching television, not watching tab and all the news, and when you watch some of the anchors, the kind of hyper they get into, hyper mode they get into, these are all stirring up our entire being. Think of ourselves. One helpful imagery that I had about ourselves was, we are like a little drum, a big blue drum in which there is a lot of water. What we do with our emotions and our food and all this, we put contamination into it and then we stir it. And what we want is white, beautiful liquid with all the wonderful tendencies. That is not possible. The Mother, the last thing I will share with you, read a little bit of Savitri, read a little bit of Mother if you can. The Mother also says, when you are going to sleep, call me, feel my presence. To some, she said, think of as though you're lying in my lap. To some, she said, think of yourself as being surrounded by a cocoon of white light. That is my light. It will be with you. So this allows us to kind of keep our consciousness slightly higher. It is a well-known fact that in sleep, consciousness sinks. In the morning when we awaken also, it is advised, because the energies kind of go to the lowest nadir, the most lower vital, the most lower regions, the energies go into. It is best if we can get up, and as soon as we get up, fill our mind with a thought of the divine. Try to connect and feel the divine presence. get out of bed as soon as the consciousness is somewhat there, in the sense that don't try to lie down in the semi-conscious state because you will normally sink lower. So get out of bed, invoke the mother, pray to the gurus, try to, become fully conscious, invoke them to be with you through the day. These are the kind of practices that are encouraged. Another question from Kalpanaji: gratitude towards the divine or towards the human? Gratitude towards the divine, most certainly at the beginning of the day, at the middle of the day, at the end of the day, but also more significantly, a gratitude towards everyone that is around us, that is a part of our journey, that has helped us be where we are, and people who do small and good things, small and big things. Sometimes even gratitude to those who remind us of the progress we have yet to make, those who irritate us, those who bother us, all of that also gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. The next question is, could you tell us what makes us separate from our psychic being in the first place? We discussed it is the physical, vital, and mental dominate our existence. We live in our mind most of the time and our vital. The average man lives to satisfy his desires. For him, accomplishing his goals and achieving his desires is what the meaning of life is, and to most, that is what success of life is. Sri Aurobindo describes that if our life is dedicated to our own well-being and to the well-being of our family and to acquiring what is required for me and I, me and myself, and for those whom I consider mine, that existence in Sri Aurobindonian parlance can be termed as an existence of a Rakshas. This is the existence of a Rakshas, according to Sri Aurobindo. If ego is the center point of all our existence, and our whole life is spent in taking care of I, me, and myself, and my family, then I am actually a Rakshas. Rakshasas are not there in Amarchitra Kada with two horns. It is us. So what is our job? One, make sure that we go out of our little ego, because even the two things that Mother said about reaching to the psychic being, enthusiasm and gratitude, are both trying to break the shell of I, me, and myself. So in short, it is that I, me, and myself that severs the link from the psychic being. We don't know it is there. The other aspect, which will come in our meditation today also, is that we have lost touch with our inner being at the heart level. We need to make sure that we are able to get in touch with our inner being there. Should we aspire to a specific vital, physical, mental, and the family, etc., etc., we want to have in the next life, for example, parents who are devotees of the mother, perhaps we can formulate it in general terms and offer it to the mother. But also, it is said in one place that the soul decides in some broad ways. We talked about the psychic deciding where it is coming. Sometimes the psychic also has a general impression of where it wants to go. It decides more or less at the time of leaving the body also, and the specifics when coming down. Our own consciousness and the attunement of our consciousness to our highest aspiration, if it becomes a constant part of us, then naturally our psychic will choose such atmosphere. So in general, there is nothing wrong in asking the mother broadly that this is what I want, mother. Please see if you can give me devotees, etc., etc., or a spiritual life and spiritual living. But try to keep it general, not specific. I believe our soul journey is better served by not picking a partner for next life, or not identifying a partner for next life, or wanting something so specific. Better to leave it to the wisdom of the Divine Mother. We are all also, we need to understand, I want to take more time for meditation now. We will get there in a minute or two. Also keep in mind that souls travel in groups. There is also the concept of group soul in this path of integral yoga. Mother has said about it, and other paths also believe in it. The equations may change. The husband-wife equation may become a brother-sister equation or some other equation, but the group souls that influence each other do have a tendency to travel together. So please be very careful in the group soul that you are, and work out your karmic equations a little more consciously, so that that group soul either dissolves if you don't want too many of them with you next time, or it enhances to a group of seekers and sadhaks are around you who can probably work with you in the next life. So these are the broad contours of rebirth. We can take it up another time. That is not the focus of these sessions. So let us probably take 10-15 minutes for meditation. I was trying to keep it to 8:30 to the best extent possible, since many of you had asked for meditation and trying to do meditation. Let us take up meditation now. If any of you need to take a bio break, you can perhaps do so. Otherwise, since you've been sitting for some time, you can rotate your shoulders gently, move your head left to right, right to left, up and down, gently, no jerks. It helps energy flow. You can push the shoulder back. It's too bright a light on your face, either from the computer or from your mobile. You can probably tilt it or turn it. If you choose to, you can turn off the lights in your in your room. Gently, you may close your eyes now. Bring your attention to the breathing. Become aware of your breathing. You have already done a few cycles of deep breathing, so you know the rhythm. Just if you have any health conditions, do not hold your breath. Just breathe in and breathe out. And if you're comfortable with your health condition, whatever it is, you're able to hold it, then you can do so. The rhythm is to inhale deeply, hold for some time, exhale slowly and fully, emptying the stomach, lungs, and the throat region, and holding for some time. You can do a few cycles in a gentle way. Keep your attention focused on the breath. When you inhale, please fill your stomach, your lungs, and your throat and hold. The body trunk should feel like a balloon. Hold it to the point of comfort. And then slowly release the breath. If your mind is wandering, bring it to your eyebrow, center of your eyebrows, the third eye. Quickly scan your body all at once, being aware of the head to toe and toe to head. Become aware of your entire body at once. Just sitting as a statue of silence and feel that silence in the entire body. If you need to, you can do a scanning from head to toe and toe to head. You can have momentary awareness of your silent mind while you're doing this. There are small pockets of silence that you are experiencing when you do this. The mind is empty. Most of us live in our minds, and most of the day, our energy and consciousness is around our head. We are mind driven, thought driven creatures. And we think that is natural. The mother points out that gradually we need to bring the attention into the heart. So if there were a line at the throat level, we are spending 90% of our time above that line. We need to start working on bringing our awareness below that line to the chest region. Take a deep breath. Become aware of the region of your lungs, the chest, the cavity there. Energy follows attention. Once we bring our attention there, the energy will follow, the consciousness will follow, the awareness will follow. Take another conscious breath and be aware of the passage of breath in this region. Right in the center of the chest, you can bring your attention there. This region at the center of the chest is called the spiritual heart, the sacred heart. Slowly move from the surface skin level to the inside. Gently move inside. Bring your attention inside. See if you feel anything there, either any tingling sensation or any other throbbing. Observe, don't participate. Notice that your mind is silent and your awareness is now in your chest region. Take another deep breath, yet continue the journey. Bring all the threads of your awareness to your heart. You drift away in thoughts, take a breath, come back to your heart. Gently try to go deeper. The entire being is silent, and our awareness is in the heart region. And we keep going slightly deeper, slightly deeper. Let go of your surface awareness. We'll have a few moments of silence now. Let go of the surface awareness which is hearing this voice and just go inside. Leave the physical being and go into your inner being. Take a deep breath. Become aware of the silence in your entire being. Remain in contact with your heart region. Let your thoughts throw you back into your head region yet. Another deep breath. Become aware of your fingertips. Your toes. You can move fingertips and toes if you wish. Becomes regaining consciousness of the body. Take another deep breath. Become aware of the surroundings. Gently move your head. Thoughts capture your entire awareness in the head region. Remain connected with the heart region. Slowly you can touch your face, rub your hands, whatever is your normal way of coming to the surface awareness. Half open your eyes. Then fully open your eyes. We have come to the end of the meditation. If any of you have any further questions or comments, you can share here, or you can ask. You can unmute yourself and ask.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
This is Shakuntala Mane. I wanted to know I have started meditating you from the first day, whatever you gave, and then I found my dreams becoming more and more explicitly illumined and guiding me to higher and higher pure consciousness. And that resulted in today's experience where I have a bust of mother in our house. The whole thing got illumined around that bust. Everything, circumstances changed. And I felt the experience which I had in my dream coming true. So I just wanted to share this with you. I know your response.
Thank you for sharing, Shakuntalaji. As we make conscious contact with our own inner being, and as we do the readings and make more effort to be in touch with our inner being and the mind, or not communicating to us, something is happening behind, but it has not come to the conscious part. Such things have a tendency to open up. Connections are established. The higher consciousness that is descending into us when we meditate, or the deeper consciousness that is emerging from inside of us, they have our outer nature or outer being is now becoming aware of what is happening in the inner being. So these are bridges that are being built, which is a good thing. Stay close to the mother, and I'm sure you will be guided by her.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Srinivas Garu. The meditation was very, very peaceful and calm. Like we don't want to come out of that state right now. So, if anyone else has any questions, we will wait for one more minute. Otherwise, we'll conclude the session.
I think we have no further questions. But the one last comment I would like to make is, please make an effort to read these chapters once or even more than once. As you come to these sessions, and it will be beneficial for us and for everyone else as well.
Yes, we conclude the session. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you very much.
you.